Antos makes an appearance at Aputure.
Awesome. What's going on, guys? Welcome to How to Get the Perfect Shot with Tom Antos. Me and Tom Antos are going to be sitting here just talking through all the exposure and monitor tools that you guys can use to get that perfect shot. We are also doing a raffle at the end of this too. We're going to be pulling out numbers, so be sure to stay tuned for that as well. But without much further ado, let's get a warm round of applause for Tom Antos.
Thank you. All right, so getting a perfect shot, I kind of want to just show you guys what I do, at least when I'm trying to get it, the correct exposure, color balance, things like that. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. It's not so much that there's one better way or worse way. It's just what's better for you.
Yeah, right? A million ways to do things. This is your way of just kind of setting up that shot.
One way you can do it is that you can just eyeball it.
Nah.
A lot of people do that, right?
They do. It's true.
If it's if it becomes a little like if you underexpose your shot, they'll just say it was like an artistic approach, going for a whatever low-key lighting, or if they overexpose it, it's the same kind of thing.
Sure. There's plenty of times to break the rules. This is you.
Yeah. So I try to get a well-balanced shot usually when I'm shooting. Doesn't matter what kind of style. And then later on, so I have options in post obviously to adjust the thing. Simply because these days, a lot of cameras I'm shooting with, like shooting with RAW or something, you can go and make those decisions later in post.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tools these days, different tools that you can use. One of the ones we're going to be showing here is the Aputure VS5 monitor. Some of the cameras you might have these tools in them. If you have a camera like a DSLR or something that doesn't have any of these tools, that's where you'd want to get a monitor like that. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to use that. It's just, I guess...
Options.
Yeah,
options.
Exactly.
If you want the options, and this is just how to use them so that moving forward, these are the tools for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So some of the tools that kind of, just wanted to go by, go through quickly is the first one is the light meter. Very often, like all the stuff that I do online or when I'm teaching, people will ask me, why would you want to use a light meter, especially these days when you're, pretty much every camera I think has a light meter built in. Yeah. Or when you have things like this, even, you have a nice monitor with all the functions. I think a light meter, even if you have, like I have this this is my first light meter that I ever bought.
I have that exact light. What? That was my light meter too. Yeah, super old.
And it works.
It just works. It does the job.
You don't need batteries for this and nothing.
Yeah.
So having a light meter, I think, is very helpful, especially when I'm doing like film work and I'm showing up, for example, like even location scouting. You show up on location and you can judge a lot about whether the location is going to work for the kind of shots that you want to get.
Sure.
Using a light meter without having to drag your camera on set and things like that. So that's where it's really helpful.
So I'm going to play resident dummy real quick. So if my camera already has a light meter in it and I can already see it on screen, why would I want to bring that to the same scene?
Well, there's different ways of doing it, different reasons for it. Main reason is because with the camera, first of all, I personally find that a lot of cameras, their light meters are not very accurate, at least not as accurate as this. Also, you're kind of limited to getting basically the reflected light. You have to point it at something, right? This, you can just put it basically anywhere and you can measure the light. Yeah. Also, this is very helpful when you're shooting, for example, on cameras that can shoot, like a log profile. They can capture a wider dynamic range. Because I find that, again, these days, a lot of these cameras are capable of doing that. And then the problem with it is that everybody wants to get as much of the like the biggest dynamic range that they can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's okay if you're shooting RAW, but if you're shooting on like a Sony DSLR or Panasonic shooting vlog, like a GH5 or something, you want to be basically, I would say, utilizing the bits of information that you have in there the most that you can. So if your scene doesn't have a wide dynamic range, why would you, let's say your scene only has 5 stops of light, why the hell would you try to capture 15 or 14 stops of light, right?
Exactly. And sometimes you don't want to move that camera too. When you're working on the bigger cinema camera systems, you don't want to be lugging that to each location and to be able to check that light.
Yeah. So basically with a light meter, you can very quickly, here, just put this down. Like, if I show up to a location and, and I'm getting my grip, lighting equipment basically slowly is being set up, but I just want to kind of see what's the dynamic range already in my scene, I can very quickly, basically get the measurement, and I know already, and I can tell my camera department, okay, we're going to be shooting in this profile, and we really only care about capturing, you know, this many stops of light, right?
So what Tom's talking about here is those ratios, making sure that, you know, here's your talent, this is what this is set at, here's my background, and making sure that whatever you set is on purpose as well, not just showing up and going.
And like just by looking up here, because this is fairly controlled lighting situation, I mean, I'm just going to eyeball it and say maybe there's 4 stops of light here, so there will be completely no advantage, or actually be disadvantage to try to shoot S-Log or C-Log or whatever your camera shoots. So again, do a quick test. There. So basically, this is the kind of light that we're getting on us here. 160. So let me just quickly put that in here. That's the thing with like this old light meters. You have to kind of go in there and
turn the knobs and but it works. Like it's a workhorse.
It does work.
That thing goes forever.
All right, and now let's say we go. You know, let's see if this is the scene that we're capturing, and we're gonna have some things that are in the shadow. So I will just go up here, and this is basically would be in the shadow, and we're getting around. Is it 40 there? So if I go, this is it's shooting at 24 frames per second at 180 degree shutter. I'm getting around f 5.6, and in the shadows, so that should be my exposure, you could say, for getting good exposure. And in the shadows, it's basically f2, so it's 3 stops on there. So you can see the dynamic range that we're trying to capture in here is 3 stops of light.
And you can know if you need to raise that ambient light to increase the shadows, or if you need to dim down that key light.
Yeah, like let's say if your camera could only capture 2 stops of light. I don't think there are cameras like that these days, but if, you know, that's how you would do it, right? You would bring up
exists somewhere. It probably exists somewhere.
Some really bad cell phone camera.
Some terrible Barbie camera somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So another thing is zebras, and not that kind of a zebra though. But the reason why, you know, they're called zebras is because they look like a zebra. So zebras, very simply, is I would say a very simple way of judging exposure, but it's very, very simple. It has its benefits, has its, you know, you could say advantages, but for me, at least for the kind of narrative filmmaking kind of setup, I usually don't bother using zebras. But if you wanted to use it in here, we can enable it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which one is it?
So all you do is turn on those, just turn this on. The reason that zebras are so useful though is that a lot of the time when you're looking at your monitor, I see a lot of young DPs that will turn on their monitors and they'll just look at the screen and just say, that's my image, I'm done. You got to realize that the image that you're seeing on your monitor, a lot of the time, unless you've calibrated it perfectly, is not going to be the image that you record.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you're looking at the monitor in glare or in weird color situations, or maybe you've gotten your eyes adjusted to like a very bright light and then you're going to look at your monitor. Your eyes are calibrating like a camera. And if you look at that monitor, you're going to think that some sections are blown out or some sections are properly exposed, and they are not exposed. So I see a lot of guys go out there, they get the big monitor, they look at it and say, great, that's my shot, I'm done. This will give you a scientific way. This will actually look at the data of your image and it'll tell you what those exposure readings are. So this is zebras.
Now this is set to what? How many percent?
70%. So
70%. Okay. So basically this, you know, when you see that zebra pattern flashing, you know that those parts of the image are basically above 70%, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the whole thing is that with the zebra is that it's good. It can show you what is basically, you could say, overexposed or past the levels that you're trying to acquire. Yeah. But it doesn't show you the whole image all at once. So you could do it, I guess, just using zebras, but you have to go manually and change the zebra from let's say 90% or 100% if you want to see what's completely overblown, overexposed, to let's say 50-40%, right? You have to kind of manually go and change those settings. So that's what I'm saying is the zebra has some functionality, but it's, at least for me, I find it's very limited.
Yeah.
It's too slow to work with.
For you guys that don't know what IRE is too, IRE stands for Institute of Radio Engineers. This is the way to measure exposure. Now basically it goes, the visible spectrum is from 0 to 100 IRE. Caucasian skin tones will usually come in around 70 IRE. So when you put that 70 in, we're properly exposed right now on Tom because we're seeing those zebras on him. Asian and sort of darker skin tones will usually come in around that 50-60, and then black skin tones will come in a little bit lower as well.
But I think it's showing that this part is okay, right?
Yeah, this part is exposed.
But this part is overexposed.
Yeah, it's putting the zebras here and then it's flashing the overexposed parts as...
You see, it's showing me that softbox is actually too bright. So I can go in and... adjust the brightness of the light. So which channel was that in?
I don't know actually. Anyways, we can dim these lights, so we can change our exposure. We can look at this and just eyeball it from the monitor.
Yeah,
We're
so
not
as you can see now, as I'm adjusting it, now that zebra is disappearing from my forehead, so I know that, you know, my whole face is well exposed. It's not, I don't have one part that's overexposed. I still have a little bit here, a little bit of a, where I'm balding, I guess, a little bit of a, of a spot, but otherwise it's okay. So I would say this is good for my skin tones, right?
Yeah.
Now this light is still a little bit too warm on you, I mean too hot, so you could bring that down, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one way of using zebras. If your camera just has zebras, just, you know, either adjust exposure in your camera or adjust the actual intensity of the lights. What's the next thing? So another thing is, using histograms. Most cameras, I think, have histograms, at least should have. If you have a camera that doesn't, then go get a different camera. And we have histograms up here, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So
let's strike on Instagram. So I'm going to turn off zebras.
Yeah.
That's waveform and vector scope. We're going to get to that later. So going through, I'm just going to turn off zebras. Zebras are off. Going over to Instagram. And this is our RGB full histogram. Full screen. So this is actually,
and again, histogram is just another way of judging where most of your pixel information is in your image. It can be very helpful, but can also be very misleading. So it's, you know, you kind of have to, like I said, you know, I would say with more experience, you're gonna know how your histogram should be looking. Like the slide that you see up here, you know, it's kind of showing you in a perfect scenario, that where it says normal, that's how it should be. But that perfect scenario is rarely gonna happen if you're shooting a feature film, let's say, and you're going for, let's say, you know, kind of a dramatic low-key lighting.
Certainly.
You would actually want a lot of your image to be basically in the darker areas, right?
Yeah.
Which here, usually on the histogram, the left side represents completely black. The right side is completely basically white or overexposed, and then anything in between is, you know, getting brighter or darker.
Yeah, and it's going to stack that like a bar graph. Basically, it's going to show you your data in pixels and how it's exposed on that graph.
So right now it's showing us, a lot of it is in the darks here. And there's in the midtones there's nothing, and then going towards basically above 60, so where 70 IR is, there's a lot of information there. And can we just jump back to the actual image?
You bet. Coming back.
So yeah. So looking at this image, I mean, I would say it's close to it, the exposure, but again, it's maybe a little bit too much information because basically in those highlights. So again, you could darken the light. So let me just darken it here.
And a lot of the time, I think when you think of histograms, you also got to think about the color as well. So a lot of that darkness in the image is coming from, you know, I have black hair. That black hair is going to read as black hair on a histogram. My black shirt is going to read as black on a histogram as well. That doesn't necessarily always mean that it's underexposed. Sometimes that just means that it is a dark part of the image.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and behind us we have a white wall. So this white wall is all reading is very, very bright as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So don't be fooled all the time by histogram. It doesn't need to look like that perfect bell curve. Sometimes stylistically too, noir, you want it to look kind of like that valley dip because that means you've got dark shadows and high highlights.
Yeah, and in a way right now, if you look at it, like here's the histogram. Yeah, it's actually telling you exactly like you said, is that because of the white background, we're still getting all of that big spike there in the highlights. And you know, if you try to take that down, then basically me and Ted here would be basically just outlines, right? On that.
We would look very odd.
Yeah. So in a way, right now we have good exposure on us, but that's where you can see very quickly how limiting a histogram is.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is one of the tools that you could use.
When we say look at these tools too, you're looking at these tools to read the data. We're not saying just look at the tool. Obviously, look at the image as well. We're saying, but just don't look at the image on the monitor and be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Go through, look at the actual data that your camera's receiving. That'll really help you tune in.
Yeah. Next way of judging it is using basically like an RGB, you know, parade or waveform monitor, depending. It's either going to be RGB, just simply means they're separated into 3 different colors. Waveform is just they're going to be combined. And here you can see it. We have on the bottom.
I think I can tune this bigger for you. Oh, I know. It'll take me a minute though.
Okay. And it's basically showing you where, you know, you can kind of see the different color spectrums or the different channels, color channels, where they are. And it's showing again as we're moving, kind of, you can see it updating. And different cameras are going to display the waveform slightly differently, or different monitors.
Yeah. So what waveform is doing is it's tracking your image from left to right, and it's going to show you your data from left to right as it goes. So you can see right here, all that waveform data is down here, and again, that's that black shirt there, so it's reading down on the floor. Now, if I were to stand up and I were to move this way, you'll see the darkness will go down, and it's going to go left to right on that monitor because the dark parts of the image are moving left to right on the image. It graphs left to right. We know it's small, but this is it. It basically looks like you'll see little waveforms here. The dark parts are the underexposed parts, and it'll track left to right as I move left to right with the image.
And that's where I would say a waveform has a big advantage over the other things that we looked at, the other tools, because it actually shows you in reference to the image, whether it's on the left side, middle, right side, which part of your image is underexposed or overexposed. And in this case, there's nothing overexposed. You can see all the lines, they go up to, what is it, like 80, almost 90, and that's the most that they go up. So we're seeing nothing's overexposed. But again, if I were to adjust the lights, and
you're gonna watch all the graph is gonna move up slowly as it gets higher and higher, or we're just getting more hotspots, really.
Yeah.
These lights aren't enough to blow out, and we're blowing it out a little bit.
Yeah, and you can see like here where I am, like my head, well, if you got closer then you can see maybe clearer, but you can see when I'm moving, those lines where I'm moving, they're basically going, those blowed out areas on my forehead, they're going past 100, so that's kind of how, like I said, that's the advantage of using this kind of a thing versus the other tools.
Certainly.
The other tool that I like using is, well, this is the RGB, and vector scope. That has not so much to do with exposure as it is with color balance. So if you're adjusting the white balance in your camera, again, you have a vector scope, and it's divided kind of very simply into 3 different spectrums of the color, and depending which one it is that you're measuring. Yeah. And can you make it bigger?
I will make it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna turn that up. Yeah, we got a bigger vector scope right there. So vector scope is actually one of the pro color science tools. They were primarily, it used to just be used by colorists, but now DPs are using it as well. There's a lot of really great features here with vector scope. Foremost is that it'll chart basically a color wheel first, and then on the inside is going to be 0 color data, and as it comes out, it's going to show you how much of your image is in that color. A lot of the time this gets used for green screen work, for instance. So you'll see if you have a green screen behind someone, it'll make one spike that is green, and that is your green screen color. And then if your talent comes on and they have a green shirt as well, you can see, does the green match up with the same green screen match? Yeah. If the spikes stack up on top of each other, or if there's 2 spikes, that means that there's actually a difference there, and you can separate from this green to the background green.
And actually, when you're doing green screen work, I would say this is where you really have to use a vector scope, because you could have a perfectly lit green screen, but if your camera settings are a little bit off and your green actually doesn't go exactly to the green channel, and in here you can see it's divided into there's yellow, what is it?
Yellow, green, you've got your magentas and your blues.
But basically there's 3 different ways, or 2 different ways of looking at it. So you have the yellow, cyan, right, magenta, or you have the other colors, which is the red, green, and blue. So if you're going, lighting a green screen, you would want that line to go perfectly, basically, towards the green. And if it's not going there, then that's when you can adjust either the hue or the white balance settings in your camera, and you'll see it literally rotating, right?
That's huge.
So that's when you know you're getting perfectly balanced green screen.
2 things I see people not using vector scopes too, that everyone should be using this for, is that one, you can do your white balances along with this. So basically, if you take a white card and you put it right on the front, and so basically there's a general available light, right? You take a white card, you put it up to your camera in that available light. If your vector scope comes up and that color is going anywhere but the center, that means that your white balance isn't right. Yeah. So if you go into, say, some mixed color temperature environment, fluorescent lights are a pain in the butt. You go in, put up that white card, and you see a harsh orange spike, that means that your color temperature is wrong.
Yeah.
Darkness balance, if you just put a camera cap on it and just check your actual sensor, you'll be able to see too, sometimes when you have your camera on or running for too long, or you turn it on and off, it doesn't start up the right way, your darkness balance will also be wrong too. So if your camera is totally covered, for instance, if I just walked up and put my hand and totally capped it, and we didn't see that dot in the center, that means your darkness balance is wrong too. The best way to do that, most of the time that'll fix it, turn off your camera, wait 30 seconds, turn it on. But a lot of people overlook this, and they don't realize it's a thing.
So anyways, but that's what you would use a vector scope. Also, I use it a lot when I'm color grading. I find it's again, you cannot color grade without it. And I think another big misconception is that a lot of people think if they're just getting like a general shot, nothing creative, that it should be kind of like we're seeing right now, just all over the place, but mainly in the center, right? And I would say no. I mean, you got to look at your shot, and like let's say if you're getting like a western feel, kind of a desert and somewhere, even if it's a dark scene in a bar, but you're getting a lot of those brown kind of colors, you obviously would expect most of the color to go there. And the same thing when you're color grading, right?
Yeah.
So you don't always want it to be in the middle. In the middle just simply means you have, you could say either all sorts of colors in your shot, or it's almost very little color, right?
Absolutely. And remember too that the way that we register color is very subjective for ourselves. There's obviously wavelengths, but when we look at color, if I stare at a white car that is orange for long enough, my eyes will eventually say this is what the new white is. So your eyes, when they're looking at a monitor, are not correct when they're seeing that color. If you want to see the color data that you're actually capturing and making sure that when your audience sees that color too, it comes out the right way, you guys really need to learn how to master these kinds of tools.
Yeah. And then the last tool is the false color, and that's my favorite, which we have right here. And the reason is because it really breaks down exactly, shows you which part of the image, what's the exposure in it. And the false color has nothing to do with colors like we just talked, which I know sometimes people were asking me. It just simply what
the image doesn't look like this. This isn't the normal. This is. I mean, I look blue all the time.
This could be like an artistic shot. Yeah. But basically, yeah, you're breaking down your image according to exposures into different, very easy to recognize colors, and that's the reason why it breaks it down like this. And then you have like a little legend here on the bottom that kind of shows you what each color represents. So, all the way on the right is overexposed. So here you see over 100% is red. So we're getting parts of this monitor is actually overexposed. Parts of my shirt, and sometimes you want that, right? So if you're going for like that really strong edge light or something, you probably will be looking for to have, let's say, that red on my shoulder. Now here, if you go into this blues and then purples, that means it's underexposed. For skin tones, I would say for Caucasian, again, this is if you want like perfect exposure. Sometimes you might want it to be darker or brighter. Again, you got to keep that in mind. But if you want a perfectly exposed kind of, I would say skin on me, then you would want it to be more, as much as you can in that middle gray there. And it's kind of, you see that on each side of that gray, you have on the left side you have the green, and then you have this kind of a pinkish color to help you really identify, are you in that middle gray, or are you in the upper gray or the lower gray too? Yeah. So that's kind of how you judge it. So right now I can clearly again see that parts of my face here are okay, but here my forehead completely overexposed again. So
you can dim that down and dim down the lights again.
Yeah.
So basically, false color is taking your entire image. It is taking the IRE charts from 0 to 100 and it's doing different colors as it goes along. Those colors it's going to map on top of your image so that you can see every part of the information and data.
Yeah. And right now, as you can see, I fixed those highlights. My skin basically looks okay. So by judging, just by looking at the false color, I can already know that my exposure is okay. On Ted there, we still have some.
I'm a little bit darker skin tone, so you're seeing I'm reading a little bit darker than Tom as well too.
You're not darker than me.
A little bit. Hey, what
I was on a beach tanning, so.
Yeah, all right, Ecuador. All right, Ecuador.
All right, so maybe if you look more towards the camera, let's see.
Yeah.
So yeah, you see Ted has a lot of those yellow spots there. Definitely you don't want, I would say, anybody's skin tone going into those yellows or like, really kind of orangey colors.
A little too bright, yeah.
So if you look at the camera again, so people can see.
Time.
And I'll bring it down. That light on you. And now it's like finding a balance where I'm still getting a little bit of few highlights there on you, and then but the other side of your face is really you get underexposed. So that's when you might want to decide, okay, put a fill light on this side, do things like that. But at least we're not really blowing out your face right now. So, and when you look at the final image, it's a properly, you could say, exposed image.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of tools that I use. I think it's important to learn to use those tools, and if you don't have them, get them.
Awesome.
Or just get this monitor and
No. We're talking about tools here. For sure.
And cool. That's it. Right?
Awesome. Do you guys have any questions for Tom Antos? He's done feature films, music videos, viral content. If you guys have any of those questions, let us know. Tom can answer them for you now. Otherwise, I think Tom will be hanging out too, so you can just ask him.
Yeah, I'll be in the area.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody? Yes. Come over here. Come in. Yeah. Tell us your name and what the question is.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're still shooting on the Ursa Mini Pro.
Oh, I'm loving the Ursa Mini, yeah. And I don't have the Pro version though. I have the 4.6K.
Okay.
Not the Pro, but as far as from what I've seen, or at least checking out at the booth and at the stores that I was looking at, it's the same camera, just doesn't have the built-in buttons and the ND filters. So.
What's your reason for choosing it?
The 4.6K. Why I think it delivers like a true cinema quality, kind of like what you would expect with like Arri Alexa or Red Epic, but in the a much more affordable package.
One more question. What do you think about the Kinfinity Terra 6K and 5K?
The 6K, I've had a chance to use it when it was prototype. Great camera, great image, but the post was very slow. That was the reason why I didn't go with it yet, and I haven't visited their booth yet to see their latest one, so I can't share my opinion on that yet. But hopefully they fixed some of the issues that they had. But I mean, at the end of the day, great image quality. But if the Ursa Mini 4.6K didn't come out, maybe I would have gone with them. But
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey man. Anybody else have any other questions for Tom Antos? Feature film director, DP, he's really done everything. He does some awesome VFX too as well. So if you have any other questions, questions. All right, cool. So we're gonna move to a giveaway. We're giving away a microphone.
We
Give
are.
me the bucks. Bucks. Shake that.
This one?
0895.
AP
0695. AP 1295. AP 1327.
Hey, they're all AP, just so you know.
AP 1214.
Next.
Okay. AP 448. No. AP 103.